who's in the audience typically.
I have windows popping up on my computer for some reason.
Brian, so we have, as we were saying, it's an interdisciplinary practice model program. And so you're going to have a mix of attorneys, well, specifically respondent attorneys, social workers, and parent mentors. This training is also open to pretty much anybody across the child welfare sphere. So there could be folks from CYFD, other attorneys, judges, just basically the audience is fairly wide. So that's who your audience is.
Excellent. And will the audience mainly be based in Bernalillo County, New Mexico, or do we have people outside of Albuquerque? Is this more of a statewide audience?
So it could very well be statewide. I would say the vast majority of folks are probably Bernalillo based, but we definitely have folks from the surrounding counties as well.
Oh, good. My presentation is mainly about Albuquerque, but some of it also has statewide implications too. So there'll be something for everybody in the audience. I haven't forgotten you, Clovis. I have ideas for folks up north. You know, I'll be mentioning rural housing authorities as well as urban housing authorities.
Perfect.
Because sometimes the solution is to move to a rural area.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program's 40th ECHO session. NMFAP is a model of respondent parent representation being implemented in the 13th and 2nd judicial districts that utilizes interdisciplinary teams of lawyers, social workers, and parent mentors working effectively together to provide quality representation and the advocacy and support families need for reunification or other preferred outcomes in the child welfare system. My name is Catherine Brock. I'm one of the lead social workers with the program. We also have on the line or on the Zoom is Jen Vieira, who will be our IT support. Today's topic is assessing housing opportunities in Albuquerque. So that we know who is with us today, please enter your name and your email address in the chat. And also we ask that you please fill out the post-session survey, which is an integral part of our program's data collection efforts under the federal grant. The survey will only take you a few minutes, and Jen will post the link to that survey in the chat. Today we have with us presenter Brian Eagan, attorney, City of Albuquerque Housing Authority. Brian is a native of Albuquerque. He graduated from Sandia High School in 1999, UNM Presidential Scholar, Bachelor of Arts in Political Science in May of 2003, and UNM School of Law with his Juris Doctorate in May 2006. He is married to local realtor David Gilpin. During law school, Brian was an intern at the City of Albuquerque Legal Department and the District Attorney Clinical Law Program at Bernalillo County Metro Court. From 2006 to 2014, he was the Assistant City Attorney for Albuquerque Housing Authority. He also advised the city's Human Rights Board and Human Rights Office on fair housing law issues. Since 2014, Brian has served as a staff attorney for the Albuquerque Housing Authority. Since 2006, he has represented AHA, public housing, and Section 8 housing choice voucher rental assistance programs with appearance in Metro Court nearly every week on landlord-tenant cases. He has also successfully defended the city and AHA in administrative investigations by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity when tenants filed discrimination complaints against City of Albuquerque staff and AHA. Our learning Our learning objectives today are to become familiar with laws about eligibility for admission to public housing programs, Section 8 housing choice voucher and project-based voucher programs, rental assistance demonstration program and low income housing tax credit program, and also to become familiar with laws about eligibility for career opportunities at the Albuquerque Housing Authority with HUD Section 3 employment program. For all of you that are joining us for your lunch break, I will give a quick warning prior to 1 o'clock that you have to get back to work. Our program or our presentation will last until about 1:15. Additionally, all of Brian's slides and materials can be found under the training resource library at nmfap.nmcourts.gov. And with that, I will pass it on to Brian. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Catherine. That was an excellent introduction. And so, yes, welcome everyone. I'm Brian Eagan, the attorney for Albuquerque Housing Authority. I'm going to start the share screen here so you can see my slides. Hope everyone can see the screen now. So raise your hand if you'd like to help people find affordable housing in Albuquerque and all over New Mexico. Now raise your hand if you'd like to help people find career employment opportunities in Albuquerque with great benefits, paid vacation, paid sick leave, opportunity to be self-sufficient. So you're in the right place. This presentation is all about helping people access affordable housing in Albuquerque and also in other parts of New Mexico. And hopefully I can get the slides to advance. One moment.
Well, what you do is
There we go. All right, so. Let's try that again. All right, so. So I'm going to be doing the presentation today. I've been the lawyer for the Housing Authority since 2006. And the brief disclaimer, any opinions expressed are obviously my own and not necessarily the policy of the Albuquerque Housing Authority or the city or HUD or any other agency. Also, as a lawyer, my client is the government agency that I work for, not individuals. And so nothing should be construed as legal advice. The learning objectives for this class are learn when people should apply for admission to programs in the Albuquerque area, how to apply, because the process varies from program to program. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's in person, on paper. Learn about the wide variety of options. There's many different programs to apply for all over New Mexico for various different target populations, depending on your income level and where you want to live and what type of building you want, and if you have special needs or not, and if you're a veteran or not. It gets very complicated very quickly. So when to apply, how to apply, and then the various options to apply to find the program that's best for the person you're trying to serve. Brief my story. So I was going to UNM Law School, and it was twice as expensive as going to undergrad at UNM. And I was running out of money. And so I applied for government benefits and employment myself. I got SNAP benefits. And I had to visit food banks while I was in law school to make ends meet. You couldn't work the first year of law school. Representative Chasey knows all about this. So from experience as well. LIHEAP, Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program benefits were very helpful for me while I was in law school. Even though I paid the utilities with my rent, I could still qualify for LIHEAP, get the LIHEAP benefit check, and then use that to help pay my rent for my little studio apartment. I learned about the Section 8 waiting list, and I discovered it was longer than I was going to be in college, so that wasn't going to be any help while I was going to law school. And so instead I took on student loan debt like most graduate students have to these days. I got a scholarship from the university. I did work study jobs. I took on financial aid to help make ends meet. And I graduated from law school in 2006 and got a full-time job with the city. And that full-time career opportunity has transformed my life. So I was able to buy my first home with a down payment assistance grant from Mortgage Finance Authority. So encourage people to get government benefits and government employment. It can be transformative. Now, Albuquerque Housing Authority, AHA. It's a municipal public housing authority as opposed to a regional state housing authority. We're funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So Albuquerque Housing Authority is really a city entity that gets federal funds. We're not HUD itself. We're just a federal recipient, or a recipient of federal funds. Our mission is to provide affordable housing and self-sufficiency opportunities, apartments and jobs. That's what we're all about. And we have 4 major programs. They're all rental assistance programs. Albuquerque Housing Authority is not going to help people buy houses. We're not a mortgage assistance program. Mortgage Finance Authority oversees helping people buy houses. AHA is a rental assistance agency who help people rent houses and apartments. So depending on what your client is seeking to do, just know right off the bat, AHA is not going to help you buy a place. They're going to help you rent a place. So our big programs are project-based voucher, PBV. Also, we have Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, HCV, which is really two different sides of the same Section 8 coin. We also have government-owned and operated public housing, apartment communities that are owned by the Housing Authority, and rental assistance demonstration, RAD, which is what we're converting public housing to. So those are the four big category programs we've got. And remember we talked about how to apply. So if people can apply today for admission to Albuquerque Housing Authority's project-based voucher program. The waiting list is open and you must apply online at abqha.org. We've gone paperless. Years ago, we stopped taking paper applications and went to a digital process, and that made it possible for us to keep taking applications during the pandemic, which was wonderful. There's never a fee to apply at my agency. If someone's charging you a fee, it's not for an Albuquerque Housing Authority program for admission to the program. The rent for these HUD-funded programs is always limited to 30% of tenant income. So the price is going to be the same roughly from program to program with a little bit of variation, but basically it's the same. And you, with project-based vouchers, you get to choose which apartment complex you'd like to get in line for. And you can, on the same application form, check all the boxes and get in line for multiple complexes at the same time. If your client is in need of housing urgently, I encourage people to apply to a new program every day. Check all the boxes, get in line for everything. There's no risk, there's no commitment. You can always turn down an offer as an applicant if it doesn't meet your needs, because your needs change by the time you get to the top of the waiting list. Maybe you have another child and now you really need a 4-bedroom unit and you applied for a 2-bedroom, you know, when you applied years ago. And so the picture here is of Nuevo Atrisco, which is an example of an apartment complex that has project-based vouchers. And we'll go more into that in a minute. Also, you can apply online right now in June 2021 for the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Rental Assistance Program. This is our biggest program at Albuquerque Housing Authority. We have 4,000 Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers, roughly, that are in use ideally at all times. HUD wants us to make sure we're using as much funding as possible, not to be hoarding the money. Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers are just that. They're a voucher. It's like a coupon. You get to go shopping for a place to live. You get to choose any privately owned house or apartment to rent anywhere in the city or in Bernalillo County or in Rio Rancho. It's your choice in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. That is the distinguishing feature from project-based voucher. With project-based voucher, the money is assigned to a particular apartment project and you wait in line for that particular apartment building. With Housing Choice Voucher, it's your choice of where to rent. This is why it's the most popular program, because it offers the most freedom and flexibility. And it's for rental assistance where you pick a place to rent, the landlord approves your lease, the tenant is paying 30% of their income towards the rent, toward that landlord every month, and then the housing authority sends the rest through a housing assistance payment by direct deposit every month at the beginning of the month. The voucher is portable. The money follows the person, as you may have heard in healthcare. The same is true for housing choice vouchers. The money follows the person. So it goes from place to place to place. You can live on the east side, live on the west side. Then after a year of living in Albuquerque, you can move to Santa Fe, move to Taos, use your voucher down in Hobbs, go to Silver City, or Dallas, Detroit, Denver, Schenectady, wherever you want to go. It's national funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's HUD money, so it can follow you to all 50 states. Take it to Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands if you want to. But the housing authority isn't paying any of the travel expenses or the moving expenses or the damage deposit. So most tenants typically just move across the street, because if you're low income, it's kind of hard to scrounge up airfare to move across the country and bring all your stuff with you. But if you've got a client that's been offered a admission to a college back east or a great job in the Midwest or whatever, this could make their option for them to move to another state possible. They knew that they could move to Dallas, take the job, and have rental assistance until they could afford to buy something. Now, finding a vacant unit for rent. You've got this coupon, you've got this voucher, and it's use it or lose it. 60 days to use the voucher, or you lose it and it goes to someone else. You got to find a vacant unit for rent. And those are on ghostname.com. Now, admission for the housing choice voucher is by lottery. And so it's an annual admissions process. Since 2018, the Albuquerque Housing Authority has not used a waiting list for Section 8. We've used the lottery. So someone asks you, how long is the waiting list for Section 8? Like when I was back in law school, how's long the waiting list? Well, it's not a traditional waiting list anymore based on time and date of application. It's a lottery process. So every year in the month of June, only in the month of June, we take applications for housing choice voucher. That's why I'm coming to present this class here in June, because this is the magic month of the year that you can apply at abqha.org to get in the big lottery pool. And we start drawing numbers at the beginning of the fiscal year in July. And if your number gets picked, you're going to be interviewed. The lottery is just to figure out who to interview for screening. Not everyone will be picked. In fact, we'll probably get 4,000 to 5,000 applications this year like we do every year, and we'll interview a couple hundred people. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Find more baskets. Apply for the project-based voucher waiting list, which is time and date of application based, and apply for the Housing Choice Voucher Lottery as well, which is a lottery drawing. So that way you'll at least get an interview for project-based voucher. It might take a few months or a few years, but you'll eventually get an interview for project-based voucher. Whereas with lottery, you might never get picked, and you just have to re-enter every year, hoping you get picked. And we got this idea from Denver, Colorado, which has been doing a lottery for decades. But in Denver, they only take applications for 2 days a year. We're kind of nice. We do a whole month of intake. And then the disability and elderly preference has been abolished for housing choice vouchers. So if your client's elderly and they're like, I don't have many more years to live, how many times do I have to enter the lottery? It's like, until you get it. There's no elderly or disabled preference for this category of assistance at our agency anymore. Also, we do have a small preference for the lottery drawing for local homeless persons that are getting assistance through a government-funded program in Albuquerque. Our target is that 125 households in transitional shelters and supportive housing programs each year would be interviewed for intake and then offered a voucher. So, and it has to be a government-funded program. So if it's just a pure private charity like a church program, that won't count. This is for things the city's helping to fund in our city. To help people, get through the Gateway Shelter and into Section 8 housing. Go from Hope Works to Gateway Housing. Go from Albuquerque Heading Home, AOC, Albuquerque Opportunity Center, into Section 8 housing. And that's because those programs all offer case management. So if we offer them a voucher, even if they're homeless, their case manager will help them get to an apartment, get the deposit, get through the process, and move in and succeed. Because that's our mission, is to empower people in our community through affordable housing and self-sufficiency opportunities. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that I would touch on a program that has both healthcare and housing together. And that program is VASH, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program. VASH is for Veterans Affairs Department eligible veterans, people that are VA benefit eligible veterans that are getting healthcare through the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Albuquerque Medical Center, the Raymond G. Murphy Medical Center. The folks at the Raymond G. Murphy Medical Center control the admissions to the VASH program. And so people just can call 1-888 AID for VET anytime nationwide to ask to be put in the VA system. And then if you're a VA healthcare patient here in Albuquerque, or which is New Mexico VA really, it's a statewide healthcare center. So this would also work for rural veterans that are in the VA health system. The VA could decide, you know what, veteran, you need both healthcare and a place to live. We're not going to be able to solve your healthcare problems if you're homeless. So let's get you an apartment or a house. If you need multiple bedrooms because it's the spouse and their kids, then it could be a multiple bedroom dwelling. And it's a lifetime benefit for the eligible veteran. The VA will take care of their healthcare needs for the rest of their life, plus the spouse and the kids. So if you're working a child custody case and the person's a veteran, this might be the solution for getting them off the streets, getting them housed, getting them stable, getting them clean and sober. The VA provides the health care. The nurse can come visit them at their residence. Most VASH veterans rent near the VA hospital in Gibson. And so that can be a transformative program. Also, it's very hard to lose that benefit. Next up, our Albuquerque Housing Authority's next big program is public housing. Our public housing program is for government, slides are going too quick. Is for government-owned and operated public housing, where the Housing Authority owns and operates units. We're down to 850 units. We used to have 900, but we're converting them to RAD. And so they're spread out in 26 different locations all across the city of Albuquerque. And Albuquerque Housing Authority only owns and operates apartments inside the city limits of Albuquerque because we're a component unit of the city of Albuquerque. We're a separate public body corporate created by the city of Albuquerque to own and operate apartments. So the mayor appoints our 5-member board. We're controlled by the city. We're a subsidiary. So we have our 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, and 5-bedroom units. They're a mixture of apartments and houses. Some of them are houses on a cul-de-sac out on the west side or by the Bosque. Some of them are an apartment tower by I-40 and Wyoming. And there's 2-story townhomes downtown. They're everywhere. They're in all 4 parts of the city, all 4 quadrants, but inside the city limits. Public housing that's outside the city limits is in the Bernalillo County Housing Department instead. And the rent is very similar, just like on Section 8. The rent for public housing is limited to 30% of tenants' current household income. So if you had a client that's in public housing and they lost their job because they were working at the casino and it shut down because of the pandemic and they had no income and they reported it by giving us a copy of their pink slip right away, we would cut their rent to zero. And then they got a new job when the restaurant reopened and now their income's gone back up again. They give us a copy of their new hire letter. We'll raise their income-based rent back to 30% of whatever they're bringing in. But it's only the cash income we count. So we don't count food stamps because you can't pay rent in Cheerios or bananas. You have to pay in money. So TANF counts, child support payments count, Social Security counts, anything that's a cash benefit would count towards the rent. But we do have a deduction for for like children and disability healthcare needs. It gets very complicated. It's like doing your taxes to try to figure out how much you're paying in rent. And then, but the admissions process, again, the point of this presentation is to know how to apply, where to apply, when to apply, and what the options are. You apply online at abqha.org. And what you can tell your clients, this is always true year round, is they can go to abqha.org and put themselves on the notification list. The Be Notified button, go to abqha.org and look for the button to be notified of when we're taking applications. We'll send out an automated text message, an automated email, automated phone calls in English, and then 30 minutes later, a phone call in Spanish. We'll to let people know that it's time to apply, because the public housing waiting list opens up whenever the list drops below 2 years worth of people. Currently, we have more than 2 years worth of people in line, so the list is basically shut to applications from the general public. So we can't predict exactly when public housing is going to reopen. So we just take names all year round, and then we send out a text message when we're ready. Admission is by waiting list for public housing. It's a traditional waiting list based on date and time of application. So you want to apply the first hour, the first day when the waiting list opens. Apply at 12:01 a.m. This is like getting a parking permit at UNM. It goes quickly. So you want to get online. And then there is a disabled and elderly preference for public housing, however. So if someone marks, they're over a certain age and they're qualifying for the disabled preference, that's helpful. So if it's grandma, ma, and the kids in the household, that could help you move in faster. Or maybe somebody has a disability. It could be physical impairment or mental impairment. It's same preference. Also, same priority if they're working full-time and or going to college full-time. This is the working student preference. So the majority of applicants to Albuquerque Housing Authority, someone in the household is already disabled. And then once you add in the elderly and the working and student preferences, most applicants have a preference. The only people that aren't elderly, that aren't disabled, that aren't working and going to school full-time are typically single parents. And so that just kind of, if you're trying to advise your client, are they going to be able to move up the line fast or not? If you're working with a single parent who has a disability, but they haven't given us a doctor's note yet saying that the applicant has depression or anxiety and that's their disability, they really need to turn that in because that'll help them move up the list faster. Or if they get Social Security disability or SSI, for example, that'd help you move up the list faster. Now, the lease in public housing can only terminate for good cause. This is one of the reasons why public housing turns over so slowly, because once you move in, it's essentially a lifetime program. As long as you qualify for renewals, you're still eligible based on income and you're still a citizen, you haven't violated the lease, you meet all the criteria, we'll keep renewing the leases. Most tenants stay for just a few years, maybe 5 years or less. But we have a few original tenants from when the buildings opened in the 70s and the 80s because they were permanently disabled. They have long-term mobility impairments that aren't going to be resolved to the point where they could work full-time, maybe be economically self-sufficient. So they've moved into these beautiful wheelchair accessible apartments that were built and they've never left. And that's okay. We're still empowering them with affordable housing opportunities. So public housing program. So the public housing waiting list, like I mentioned, is currently closed to adding new applications to the general public right now in June 2021. This will change over time. So if you're watching this program after June 15th, 2021, please check the website, abqha.org, to see if the waiting list has since opened. And of course, apply to be notified. So always go to the website, give us your current name, phone number, email address if you have one, and we'll text you, we'll email you automated notices whenever the waiting list is opening. We keep it closed when there's more than 2 years worth of people in line because it's really hard to find people more than 2 years later. Now here's the narrow exception that all the lawyers will appreciate. There's always a loophole, right? So our admissions policy does allow for an involuntary displacement preference. This is a special preference for people that live in Bernalillo County who are domestic violence survivors who have agreed to testify as a witness for the state of New Mexico and have a letter of referral from the Second Judicial District Attorney's Office Victim Impact Coordinator. So if you're working with a domestic violence survivor and they're going to testify at trial, and they're cooperating with the DA. The DA might give them a letter, and then they'll be granted the admissions preference, so we can still grant them an interview and see if they qualify for admission or not. That means they skip the waiting list. Also, for City of Albuquerque city limit residents, so this doesn't work if you live in Bernalillo County, unincorporated area, or if you live outside of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, but for our city residents, our pequeños, if your rental unit is destroyed by flood, fire, or demolition, otherwise, maybe we're widening a street and we took it out with eminent domain, then if the building's been red tagged, the displaced tenant can bring their paperwork in from city code enforcement and say, help, my house burned down, my mobile home burned down, I got flooded out. I need a place to live. And then we'll grant them the displacement preference, and they'll be interviewed to see if they qualify for admission or not. This is not a guarantee of admission. This is just saying we'll give you an interview even though the waiting list is closed. And we're going to let you skip the waiting list. So those are the involuntary displacement preferences. The preferences for the general population, if you apply to the waiting list when the website is open to the general public, again, are disabled, elderly, working full-time, going to school full-time, or a combination thereof. So if you have a TANF household and they're seeking to become self-sufficient, we want to help those people move up the list. Now, the last category of our rental assistance programs is RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. RAD is the future of affordable housing in America for Housing and Urban Development Department funded programs. Housing authorities in big cities across the country and small towns have been converting to RAD. Even Santa Fe County has already, or Santa Fe City has already been converting their units to RAD. Albuquerque is just getting caught up with what some other towns in New Mexico are already doing, and other big cities that were doing many years ago. RAD is a process of converting from public housing program funding to Section 8 program funding, while the government still maintains ownership of the land under the building and control of the rental units. So they remain permanently affordable. The tenants' incomes are still low income. The rents are still based on that low income. It's still 30% of your income. But a RAD program conversion typically triggers a major renovation or demolition and replacement of the building they're in. So we're currently doing that at the Broadway Place public housing site at Broadway and I-40, Broadway and McKnight Avenue. We're going to demolish all the buildings later this year and build new ones to replace them. And it'll be a bigger complex. We're going from 1-story units to 2-story units. And the complex should open up in the next year or two. All the current tenants are relocating to other parts of the city while we do this big renovation and replacement. Other parts of the public housing system are also going through renovations right now in Martineztown. They're doing a renovation, then comes 6100 Harper. So gradually over a decade, we're probably going to renovate everything we own and expand the supply of units to help get back to that multiple thousand person waiting list to help clear it out. If it's a RAD program conversion, the housing authority pays to pack the tenants and move them and to move them back. Every tenant has the right to return. We pay both ways. And the rent stays roughly the same. And so this will help us get on with admissions, because if we can expand the supply, we can serve more people. Project-based voucher program is admission by a waiting list. Remember I talked about at the beginning that project-based vouchers, the RAD units have project-based voucher subsidy layered over them. RAD is the capital subsidy for the building to be constructed. Project-based voucher is the rental assistance subsidy to keep the rent affordable. So that's where Martineztown comes in. And so that Martineztown waiting list is currently open. If you have clients that want to move to live downtown right off of Lomas and Broadway, and they're looking for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, or a 4-bedroom place to live, it could be perfect, especially if they're seniors. There's an on-site senior center at Martineztown that serves hot lunch 5 days a week. The Department of Senior Affairs is serving hot lunch 5 days a week. So there'll be activities. So grandparents raising grandchildren, Martineztown could be a very good fit. And since they have newly renovated kitchens, some of them are even going to be wheelchair accessible. If you have a disabled client with a mobility impairment, they should definitely check it out. No fee to apply. And that waiting list remains open until shut. We don't have a cutoff date for that. Now, maybe your client you're working with has a criminal background. That's not necessarily going to be a barrier to admission. We admit felons all the time. Bernie Madoff could move right in. His issues were all financial nature. Actually, Mr. Madoff has passed, but you get the idea. So the Federal Fair Housing Act applies to the admissions process at Albuquerque Housing Authority as it does to big landlords all across the country. In fact, most rental transactions in the country. And so there can be no disparate impact on the basis of race in admissions policies. So we have a memo from HUD General Counsel Office telling us that we need to think about how our policies are constructed to make sure our criminal background check standards don't impact people of race with a disparate impact, because there's people of race are more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system than white people. And so we had to tailor our policies with that in mind, thinking that people of color are overrepresented in the criminal justice records. And so we've tailored our program now that we only do looking back 3 years. We only look back 3 years, and we're only looking for drug or violent crime convictions for the admissions process for project-based voucher rental assistance program and housing trust voucher rental assistance program. For the government-owned and operated public housing units that we operate, we still look back 7 years because we have more skin in the game there. We own those units, and we have to control them to prevent disruptions of the peace and destruction of our property. But still only looking back for convictions, only for drugs and violence. Property crimes are not a problem. We will admit people with burglary or car theft on their record, or DWI for that matter. Those are all just, that's a traffic offense. So, and even if your client that you're trying to help get in does have something in their past within the last 7 years for public housing or 3 years for Section 8, they should still apply. Give it a shot. If we pick them for a screening interview, it comes up in the screening interview that they've just got convicted of drug possession 2 years ago, and they get a denial letter, have them write back right away within 10 days saying, I want a hearing, there are mitigating circumstances that apply, and then tell us about why we should waive the rule. Are they a drug treatment success story? Have they been going to Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous? Do they have clean drug test results they want to show the hearing officers? See, I'm clean and sober. I can prove it. My probation officer wrote a nice letter of recommendation. I've got my pastor here to talk about how I've changed my life, or my therapist, or just they should explain to us how the recovery from drug and alcohol is going on now. If they're in recovery, that's a protected class. They have a disability. Being in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction is a disability, and we have to reasonably accommodate people with disabilities. So they should write back and say, please reasonably accommodate my disability. I'm in recovery. I can prove it. I've changed my life. That was the old me. I did that when I was drunk and high, and that's how I ended up with the criminal conviction. But now I'm not going to do that anymore. I've got my kids back, or I need this apartment to get my kids back. Please, please, please let me in. And then we might let them in. So a lot of the time we overturn denials if people just write back and say, I really need it. I've got case management. I can prove I'm clean and sober. You're welcome to come and inspect the fridge. My probation officer checks for beer every Tuesday, so there'll never be any problems, and so a lot of the time we'll let them in. Now, I talked about how Albuquerque Housing Authority is the city of Albuquerque's public housing authority. We report to the mayor and the council of Albuquerque through the Board of Housing Commissioners that the mayor appoints. We have a sister housing authority also in Bernalillo County called the Bernalillo County Housing Department. They report to the Bernalillo County Commission. They are the county's public housing authority, PHA. The county of Bernalillo also runs a public housing program, just like Albuquerque Housing Authority. They're also converting to rental assistance demonstration program, just like Albuquerque Housing Authority. They also have a Section 8 housing trust voucher program, just like Albuquerque Housing Authority. In fact, we have shared jurisdiction. Bernalillo County takes care of Albuquerque city residents, and we take care of county residents outside the city limits with Section 8 vouchers. The city vouchers can be used out in the county, out in, say, Chillicothe or Harris or Sandia Park, and city vouchers and county vouchers from Bernalillo County Housing Department can be used downtown in the middle of Albuquerque. So we have a memorandum of understanding. So if you're working with a client or a neighbor or someone who's complaining, saying that tenant's on Section 8 and they're not following the rules, they have this problem going on in their dwelling. It could be a city voucher, it could be a county voucher. You'll need to tell both agencies to figure out what's going on. Also, we both, Bernalillo County and Albuquerque Housing Authority, have an agreement of memorandum of understanding with the city of Rio Rancho to allow our vouchers to be good in the city of Rio Rancho. The city of Rio Rancho, New Mexico is located in Sandoval County, New Mexico. Sandoval County does not have its own housing authority separately. So Rio Rancho doesn't have its own housing authority either. So they just told Bernalillo County and Albuquerque, your vouchers are good here. You want to bring money to help take care of Rio Rancho residents, by all means. So you can use a voucher from Albuquerque Housing Authority to rent in Enchanted Hills in northern Rio Rancho. It's still all the same territory. Now, applying for admission, Bernalillo County Housing Department also has an online application process at bernco.gov/housing. The Bernalillo County Housing Department office, as of today, June 15, 2021, remains closed for pandemic safety precautions under the COVID-19 protocols. So you can't do a walk-in at Bernalillo County right now. Their office is not receiving visitors on a walk-in basis, just like Albuquerque Housing Authority is not receiving visitors on a walk-in basis. Albuquerque Housing Authority office is at 1840 University Boulevard Southeast, and you have to have an appointment to come to the lobby just to turn in paperwork. However, that will probably change in the future. Stay tuned. Call ahead to find out if the lobbies have reopened. Also, the Bernalillo County Housing Department used to be at 8200 Bridge Boulevard Southwest for many years, decades. They were in the South Valley. They recently moved last year in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, last summer, to Wellesley Drive Northeast. So if you're writing to the Bernalillo County Housing Department, make sure you send the letter to Wellesley Drive Northeast, Suite 100. It's the same building that you go to for birth certificates, right off of I-40 in Carlisle. Now, Bernalillo County Housing Department's admissions process is different than Albuquerque Housing Authority. Remember, I talked about the objectives of this class are where to apply, how to apply, when to apply, options. So if your client is looking for an option of they want to get on a waiting list, they've applied for the lottery and they've done the Housing Authority lottery, but they want to find more baskets. Remember, I said don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if it's a lottery drawing where most people don't get picked. The County Bernalillo is another basket you can apply for. They use a traditional waiting list process for their housing choice voucher program. But the problem is if you use a traditional waiting list process, it gets quite long. The Bernalillo County waiting list typically opens once every few years. They take in 5,000 applications and they have to close it for a few years while they're going through it. So the general waiting list for Bernalillo County Section 8 is closed right now. But they also administer the funds for San Miguel County, which is the county seat is the town of Las Vegas. So if you have a client that's willing to move out to Las Vegas, New Mexico, maybe they have family there, they want to go to Highlands University in Las Vegas, they enjoy the mental health care services that are available in Las Vegas, New Mexico. For behavioral health institutes out there, they can apply to the waiting list for San Miguel County, which is open. They're taking applications online today at bernco.gov/housing for San Miguel County. That list is always open because there's not that many people that want to move there. And so compared to Albuquerque, where there are tens of thousands of people that want to move here, or that need rental assistance that already live here, I should say, really. And so the County Bernalillo Housing Department is also the agency that administers the Tiny House Village. You may have heard about the Tiny House Village. It's now open right off of Zuni Road, just south of East Central. I forget what the cross street is, but if you visit the website, there are details. Although it's operated, I believe, by the folks there at the Albuquerque Indian Center. And Tiny House Village is a transitional housing program for people that are living on the street, that are homeless, unhoused, that are looking for a place to stay while they're trying to get in with Section 8 or public housing or RAD, one of these other programs. And Tiny House Village does not accept children. It's only for adults. There's no fee to apply for admission to the County Bernalillo programs. And now the County Bernalillo does have an open waiting list as of this moment, June 15th, 2021, for their public housing. Remember I said the County Bernalillo has public housing in the South Valley outside the city limits of Albuquerque? So if your client wants to live in the South Valley, they're from the South Valley, they have their children's schools are out there, for example, maybe this might be a good fit. So it's for specific apartment complexes, El Centro, Elder Apartments, and Seabold Village Apartments, which specializes in tenants with disabilities. And they're on the same street, Central Familiar Street, right off of Isleta Boulevard Southwest, right next to the sheriff's substation. And there's also a senior meal site at that location, so hot lunches if you have a disabled client that has difficulty preparing food, or they just like the socialization of having lunch with their friends. There's a sheriff's substation, like I said there, there's a bus line there, and Seabold Village specializes in young disabled people under 62. And that's a waiting list, not a lottery. Now, we talked about the big programs that Albuquerque Housing Authority operates and that Bernalillo County operates. There's another option out there, low-income housing tax credits. Low-income housing tax credit apartments are not directly owned and operated by housing authorities. It's private property that's government funded. This is actually the biggest affordable housing construction program in the country, low-income housing tax credits. It's pronounced LIHTC, rhymes with high-tech. And so it's the Internal Revenue Service that actually runs this program through the Department of Treasury. It's not even U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's not HUD technically. And it's a capital subsidy construction fund program. So it's a tax credit for the dude that's building the apartments, not for the tenants that live in the building. But the product of these tax credits is apartment buildings that offer reduced priced rents. The rents are, however, at a fixed price. This is a direct contrast to the earlier example of the HUD programs where it was subsidized. If you have a HUD subsidy, rents go up and down as tenant income goes up and down. So you had the job at the casino, then the casino closed. You were working at Sandy Casino and shut down because of the pandemic. You have no income. Your rent would go to zero if it was public housing or Section 8. In tax credit, the landlord's not going to change the rent price. You just need to find some money and start paying that rent. So you have to scramble to get unemployment insurance, borrow money on your credit card, get your child support going, that sort of thing. So tax credits are good if you have stable, predictable income. It's great for working class, blue collar folks, even teachers, that aren't making much money. It's not going to work really if you have SSI. If your client has zero income or very little income, less than $1,000 a month, it's probably not going to be enough to cover the tax credit rent. But if your client is making $100,000 a year, they're over the limit. So tax credits are for people that have some money, but not too much money. And the number varies from apartment complex to apartment complex. It kind of depends on when the apartments were built, how much they're going to charge. There's great variability from site to site. So you might qualify at some places and not others. So I encourage people to apply to a new landlord every day until they get in somewhere. So like we said, the rent is not subsidized. It's just discounted. It's fixed. You have to have some income, but not too much. Oh, this is the best part. Once you get in with the tax credit landlord, they have to keep renewing the lease. Under the Uniform Owner-Resident Relations Act in New Mexico, landlords for private property can simply just give you a 30-day notice at the end of your lease contract, say, out, I want you out. And that's it. There's termination for no cause shown, for convenience. It's because the lord of the manor wants you off his land. It's private property and they can just throw you off. And if it's a month-to-month lease, at any point, they can just give you a 30-day notice. It's June 15th. Here's your 30-day notice, be out by August 1st. But not in tax credit world. If you're a tax credit funded apartment complex, like much of the apartment complexes up and down Montgomery Boulevard, or the big government funded complexes downtown, around downtown Albuquerque or on Central, they have to keep renewing the lease for every year of the tax credit. So if you move to a new apartment building like Nuevo Atrisco Apartments at Central Munster, where they're on a 20-year tax credit cycle, for 20 years, they have to keep offering you lease renewals so you can get stable there. And even if you and the landlord don't get along emotionally, if you're not violating anything in the contract that they can prove with admissible evidence, you keep paying the rent and you're not committing any crimes that can be proven, that sort of thing, then you just have a personality conflict and the landlord's going to keep renewing your lease. So this is very helpful for mentally ill clients that landlords don't like dealing with, but if they keep paying the rent and they don't commit any big violations that are provable, they're going to have to just keep renewing that lease. So new tax credit units are built every year in Albuquerque and also in other parts of New Mexico. So rural New Mexico, pay attention. This is also for you. Every year, Mortgage Finance Authority approves funding for Albuquerque, a site in rural New Mexico somewhere, and also somewhere on tribal land. So new tax credit units are going up. You can find the master directory at housingnm.org, which is the Mortgage Finance Authority website. It comes under the category of affordable housing, is the brand name Mortgage Finance Authority that uses. And so you would go to MFA's housing site, and then you click on renters, then click on affordable housing, and that brings up the big directory, and then click on which city your client wants to live in: Albuquerque, Belen, Los Lunas, Los Alamos, Las Cruces, wherever. And then it'll show you the addresses and the phone numbers to call to apply for those places. You apply to each site separately. This is a big difference than Albuquerque Housing Authority. They charge an application fee at tax credit, because remember, these are privately owned apartments. The purpose of owning private property is to make money. These are places that seek to turn a profit for the investors that bought the tax credits that paid for the construction of the building. So there's a $25 to $40, maybe even $50 per adult application fee. So if it's grandma, mom, her boyfriend, 3 adults, that could be $75 just to apply for admission to the apartment complex. And there's no guarantees you're going to get in. So be selective when applying for tax credit landlords. Only apply to people that are really serious about living there. Private property managers operate the places, so you don't apply through the housing authority. You apply directly to the management firm that runs the place, like Monarch Properties, for example, or other big property management company. They typically have on-site management, which is great. The tenants get attention from their landlord. You have some place to go when you want to report a dripping faucet or you've got a roof leak. There's someone keeping an eye on the parking lot, keeping an eye on all the tenants, make sure they're behaving themselves and following the lease, and there's less crime, that sort of thing. They have separate waiting lists at the tax credit landlord sites. So each little apartment complex has its own admissions policy, its own priority preferences, its own target population of people that are elderly, people that are disabled, families with children, playground on site next to school, So tax credit sizes will vary greatly from studio apartments to multiple bedroom dwellings. Some of them are 1-story buildings, some of them are 4-story buildings. It could be downtown. You could live above the grocery store at the Imperial Building in downtown Albuquerque, for example. The income limits do vary from place to place and size of household. The more people on the application, the higher the income limit. This is the classic example I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Nuevo Atrisco Apartments, which just opened up at Central and Unser Northwest in the last few years. It's a multiple story building. This is the future of affordable housing in New Mexico. It's multi-story, it's multi-family. Tax credits aren't being used to build single-family detached houses. It's not profitable the way a big block building like this is. It's going to be, in the future, tax credit apartment complexes are going to be built on bus lines. That one's built, for example, at the Central and Unser Transit Center. This is where the ART buses turn around, where the rapid ride buses turn around. There's a public library on site. There's healthcare on site. There's a dialysis clinic on site. There's a playground on site. It's a lovely place to live. And they're building a food court next door, and there's a pharmacy across the street. Now, and one other thing to mention too about Nuevo Trisco, there's two different sources of funding going on there. So if you do have a client on SSI or has no income at all that would like to live at Nuevo Trisco, how do you get them in? You get them a project-based voucher. That waiting list is currently open with abqha.org. Go to abqha.org and apply for it and get on the project-based voucher waiting list for Nuevo Trisco. But I warn you, there's a couple thousand people in line and it might be a couple of years. If they can afford it, they can apply directly at that leasing office for the tax credit units. It's an 80-unit building, roughly. 60 of the units are tax credit where the rent's reduced, but they're fixed. 20 of them, they have that subsidy overlay of the project-based voucher from the housing authority, so that anyone could afford to rent those 20 units, that quarter of the building. So there's two ways into Nuevo Trisco. One if you've got some money and one if you have no money. Now, maybe you have a client that's currently in crisis. They're running out of money to pay their rent right now. They don't want to get on a waiting list and wait 2 to 5 years for a Nuevo Trisco or try and get in the lottery. They need help paying the rent for June. They need help paying the rent for July. They owe money from right now. The Emergency Rental Assistance Program is the solution for that. So it's administered by the state of New Mexico, Department of Finance Administration, DFA. This is a statewide program. It's not just limited to Albuquerque, Bernalillo County. They're implementing a national program. Emergency rental assistance is being operated all across the country now through the end of the summer, through August 31st. New Mexico's funds are administered by the Department of Finance Administration. And the rules are a little bit funky. There's one pool of money for the city of Albuquerque residents. There's another pool of money for all the rural New Mexico residents outside of Bernalillo County. And then there's a little bit of money in between for the people that live in unincorporated Bernalillo County that are not in the city. So, but just go to that website and they'll help you tease out which category you go to. This program, Emergency Rental Assistance, is for people that are 80% of area median income, AMI, 80% of area median income or less, which is actually a good chunk of the New Mexico population. And they're administering federal funds, so all these rules apply. It's easy to get, though, as long as one person in the household has been getting unemployment insurance benefits or pandemic unemployment, PUA, whatever it was, from the Department of Workforce Solutions, or they experienced a decrease in income, incurred significant costs. Healthcare costs exploded because they got COVID. They didn't lose their job, but they had to spend a lot on healthcare, or experienced other financial hardship due to COVID. Their hours got reduced because the cafe cut them back to one day a week, or they had a job loss, something, pandemic related. You can pay rent, help cover that 3-day notice of non-payment of rent your client just got. You can pay utility bills. Maybe they owe a ton of money to Public Service Company in Mexico, electricity, or the gas company, or propane, or wood. Or, they live in a rural area. They need pellets for their wood burning stove. They need trash removal to pay Waste America, Waste Management Company, or the City of Albuquerque Solid Waste Department. They owe trash removal for the house. Or other expenses, such as hotel motel costs. They're living on a motel on East Central because they lost their job. So those people can swoop in and pay money right away. There's no waiting list for Emergency Rental Assistance Program. They're trying to spend millions of dollars before the end of the summer. They're not being very picky. If you can meet the criteria, they'll be happy to send a check to whoever the landlord or the utility company, or as it were. Now, this is an evergreen slide. This bit of information will serve you the rest of your career. This information never changed for me during the 15 years I've been a lawyer for the Housing Authority. AffordableHousingOnline.com has been around for decades now. I think it started in the 90s. And they seek to keep track of all 4,000 housing authorities in the country and whether their waiting list is open or shut for public housing and for Section 8. So if your client is looking for an affordable place to live and they're willing to relocate because they're living in their car right now in East Central and they want off the street, they're willing to move to where the apartment is or the house is, they can go there and find an open waiting list. And I searched in New Mexico. There are roughly 27 different public housing and project-based voucher waiting lists. There's roughly 23 housing authorities. This number will change over time because of mergers. There are fewer and fewer agencies as the years go by. And there's about 23 different Section 8 waiting lists they can get on, and that you can find the information through that website. And there are just a few waiting lists that traditionally throughout my career have always been open. These waiting lists never shut because they're in rural areas. There's just less demand out there because there are fewer people there. So they have fewer applicants. So if your client is desperate for a place to live and they live in Clovis, they should stay in Clovis and just apply for the waiting list in Clovis. They live in Tucumcari, stay in Tucumcari. If they're in Albuquerque and they're willing to move up to the county of Santa Fe to live out in Espanola or Edgewood, unincorporated Santa Fe County, not inside the city limits, you're not going to be renting on the plaza. The county of Santa Fe waiting list is typically around 2 years long, which is relatively short in the world of affordable housing. Clovis and Tucumcari, I think, are shorter lines. San Miguel County, remember I talked about how Bernalillo County Housing Department administers the San Miguel County waiting list? San Miguel County moved to Las Vegas, New Mexico for a year and then port the voucher back to Albuquerque after 12 months. Truth or Consequences Housing, TRC has a short waiting list typically. They have public housing and Section 8, moved down to the Elephant Butte Lake region. Western Regional Housing Authority. So remember how I talked about how Albuquerque Housing Authority is a municipal housing authority? So like TRC is also a municipal housing authority, or Tucumcari, or County of Santa Fe. There's also the regional entities. There's Western Regional Housing Authority, Northern Regional Housing Authority, and Eastern Regional Housing Authority. Those are the 3 regional entities that cover all parts of New Mexico not otherwise served by a county or city housing authority. And they're accountable to a board of commissioners made up of representatives from each county appointed by the governor. So the Western Regional Housing Authority's headquarters is in Silver City, and they typically also have a short waiting list. And you have a client that lives in Albuquerque, but they don't drive or they don't have a car. How are they going to get to Silver City? There's a direct flight that leaves Albuquerque Airport in the morning, typically going up to Silver and back and forth. It's subsidized. You could move to Silver City with your hand luggage if you're living on the street. You know, you could fit it in 2 carry-on suitcases and move out there. They have a bus line in Silver City. They've got a Walmart. There's Western New Mexico University. You could turn your life around in Silver City. So if you've got a client that's willing to relocate, to get their life together so they can get their kids back, that might be an option. They have public housing and Section 8 in Silver City. And Western Regional Housing Authority also serves Deming and all sorts of counties in southwestern New Mexico. Eastern is based in Roswell. They serve everything from Clayton down to Jal. And Northern Housing Authority serves Taos and surrounding counties, basically from Rio Rancho north. Now, maybe your client wants to buy a place. They're tired of renting. They've decided they want to buy an affordable starter home. Mortgage Finance Authority could be the solution. Mortgage Finance Authority has programs for home buyers. Like myself, I got a down payment assistance grant with Mortgage Finance Authority to buy myself a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath condominium. It was half a house, and that's what I could afford on one income. And so perhaps that's how your client gets their kids back, because they're able to buy a place, a little condominium for themselves and their kid, and then the courts will trust them with the house. They also oversee programs for renters at housingandm.org. Find the comprehensive statewide directory. Mortgage Finance Authority is like a bank. They keep track of money. They don't own anything. They just channel federal grants and federal tax credits and funding of all types to housing authorities all across the state and other nonprofits and private companies. So their directory is always up to date because they always know where the money is, because people tell their banker what their phone number is. So that statewide directory is available for free. You can download it at any time from housingandm.org, or you can call their office and they'll just mail you a hard copy if your client doesn't have access to the internet. Or maybe you're at your law office, you fill out the little online web form and have them mail a copy to your client that doesn't have access to the internet. Or if they're living on the street, you hand it to them when they come visit your office. And then you tell that client to knock themselves out and call every landlord in that book and apply for every program they can find. If they've applied to every program in the Housing Authority directory from MFA, they will get in somewhere. Project-based Section 8 housing. So Mortgage Finance Authority's renters page has the directory of project-based Section 8 housing. Sounds similar, but is not the same as project-based voucher. PBV is different than project-based Section 8 housing. So you go to housingandm.org, click on the renters button, click on subsidized. That brings up a directory of cities. Click on the city you want to live in, Albuquerque, for example, or Belen. There are project-based Section 8 housing in rural New Mexico as well as in urban New Mexico. You apply separately at each apartment complex. Typically, it's a paper-based form. Some of them may have converted to the internet during the pandemic. They have separate waiting lists. They don't use lotteries. The lists are usually shorter than the housing authorities. There are fewer places to choose from, though, than with tax credit. With tax credit, there's like 30 options in Albuquerque alone. Project-based Section 8 is more like 10. The rent is subsidized, however. So again, if you've got a client that's on Social Security disability insurance, they're on supplemental security income, they've got little tiny incomes, they make less than $1,000 a month, this might be a good fit. Or they're on a tiny bit of child support. Maybe the father went to prison, there's no child support. This might be a good fit because it's 30% of your income is what goes towards the rent, and there's no application fee. So it's just like public housing or Section 8 in terms of price, but it is not portable because it's not a housing choice voucher. So tell your client you're applying for this complex and you're going to live there the rest of your life, or this is not portable. You can't take it with you to some other place. But it could be a good place to live while you're waiting for the housing choice voucher lottery to come through for you someday. There's typically a property manager on site, so you can do business face to face in case your client doesn't use the internet or be more comfortable doing things in person. Examples of project-based Section 8. This example is current. As of June 15, 2021, this person's taking applications. She would like to hear from you. Call her today. Erin Vigil and I have known each other for years, and she sends me emails periodically whenever her waiting list opens and says, "Send me applicants, Brian." So there's no fee to apply. The waiting list is shorter than AHA. La Rosalana Apartments specializes in seniors, but they also have a category of apartments for people that are not yet elderly. So they have multiple wheelchair accessible apartments on site with ground floor entrances. So contact her to see if it's right for your client. 1025 Chilwood Park Boulevard, Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico. AHA is now hiring. So again, the mission of Albuquerque Housing Authority is to empower people in our community through affordable housing and self-sufficiency opportunities. So if you have a client that would like to work, they need subsidized housing right now, but long-term they want to be self-sufficient. They want to own their own place. They're looking for careers. They used to work in construction and they got laid off, or they used to work in food service, but they didn't get into construction, or they used to work in property management or in an office job somewhere, or whatever. Have them check out our website. We have a variety of positions for a variety of backgrounds. We have jobs that are inside in the office, like where I work, doing administrative stuff. We have stuff that's outside, climbing ladders, getting on roofs, fixing swamp coolers, mowing lawns, painting stuff, cleaning, driving a truck. Our maintenance technician is our entry-level job, and you just need a driver's license and a GED. And we'll waive the general educational development certificate if you've got like 5 years of experience. Our staff speak many languages. We're an equal housing opportunity provider. So we have people from multiple countries that work for us. So we are open to all sorts of backgrounds. Our public housing property management job is coming up. We have a vacancy for a manager. We have a vacancy coming online in the future for human resources. So if someone would like to be our HR manager, we have lots of opportunities coming online. And these are all career opportunities. We're looking for people that want to work 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. We're not looking for temps. We don't need evenings and weekends. We work Monday through Friday at this agency during the day, typically 8 to 5 or 7 to 4. And it's a great place to work. We've got the full city benefits package, medical, dental, vision, life insurance on the first day. The Housing Authority pays for the life insurance, 100% for the first big block, and you can buy supplemental coverage if you really want it. We pay like 80% of the cost of the medical, the dental, and the vision. You just pay 20% as the worker. We have para pensions, Public Employee Retirement Association pensions. So if you work for the state, come to the city, come to the Housing Authority. We put more into the pension than if you work at the state. The workers pay less, the employer pays more. We have 10 paid holidays at the Housing Authority. They don't offer that in the private sector. We have paid vacation and paid sick leave and paid jury duty leave and paid voting leave. We now offer paid parental leave. So if you're a working parent and you've been thinking about having another kid, but you don't have enough leave, come to us. After working here for a year, you could qualify for paid parental leave. That includes adoption or natural birth. And
I may have moved your thing. I'm sorry about that.
But that's
I just
okay.
wanted to jump in real quick and let everybody know that it is now 12:58. So if you have to jump off at one, just a reminder.
And we're almost done here. So, and then you'll be working in our newly opened leasing offices. We're opening up in neighborhoods around the city or at the main office. The regional offices are at the apartment complexes. We even have a whole shiny pickup truck fleet. We'll provide tools, steel-toed boots. It's a great place. Now we have that HUD Section 3 preference. So under the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968, which creates the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Section 3 requires that there be a preference for the hiring of low-income persons. So if you're a public housing resident, your client's a Section 8 resident, they're on the waiting list, or they're just low income, they could get preference in the hiring process. Here's the 80% of AMI chart. So if your client is a 3-person household, it's a single parent with 2 kids, and they're making under $48,600, they could get a preference when we're doing interviews, and there's a tie between the single parent that needs the job to pay their rent and the person that's in a higher income household where the other half just wants to work because they're bored. The people that need the money to pay their rent will get the job. That's the tiebreaker. They get 5 extra points. So that's our presentation today. I'm here to answer questions about Albuquerque Housing Authority or other housing authorities. Is it on Section 8 or tax credit? Let it rip.
Well, I do have a
Questions on
question,
it?
Brian.
You can write it on the chat.
So and this is going to be very specific to a client who is severely underhoused. It's household of 10 living in an 800 square foot home. But when I do his application online, and I put his address and where he lives, there's no place for me to put that in there that shows that they're severely underhoused and this is a need. So I think my question is the VISPADAT something that should be done and should help with securing housing?
Ooh, good question. I don't know specifically if the VISPADAT should be done, but what I can tell you that's generally been true throughout my career is you only get things you ask for. It never hurts to turn in an application for a program, because if you don't qualify, you'll just get a denial letter, and you can always appeal to explain why you really do qualify. So when in doubt, you should always apply for a government program unless you know for sure you're not going to get it. For example, people don't often realize that mixed immigration status households can qualify. And people that are in mixed immigration status are typically very nervous about going to a government agency and telling them, this is where I live. And yes, I don't have papers, but I need a place to live. And the way the Housing Authority, all HUD-funded programs actually work this way, handles that is like, okay, single mom is going to give birth at UNM. She's pregnant right now. The child's going to be born in the country, will have citizenship birth, by born in the United States. We'll house the citizen child. And then the parent can simply decline to answer the question when they're filling out the form. It's called a Section 218 declaration. They just check the box at the bottom saying, I decline to answer the question of whether yes or no I'm a citizen or otherwise have eligible immigration status. So it may be the same situation, Catherine, with your client where they're severely overhoused, they go through the paperwork, and then there's finally a narrative spot where you can explain, there's a code violation going on here, they're overcrowded, they're exceeding the code limits, and so they need to move. And so I would always just turn in an application with whatever category of funding you're trying to get and see if you qualify. It might help. Albuquerque Housing Authority does not have a preference for people that are overcrowded in admissions. That won't help them get up the line. But it might be in some other program somewhere where that will be significant is if you were already a HUD subsidized tenant in a public housing program or a voucher program, you would qualify for more bedrooms because we don't make more than 2 people share a bedroom. And that many people in 800 square feet was a city code violation. So they need to be careful that nobody calls 311 to make complaint about like mold in the bathroom, because they would probably tell everyone, you can't live like this. This is too many people for this small place. The code violation though is just for city specific. So if they live outside the city of Albuquerque, then there may be no code requirements, for example, if they live in Torrance County.
I just had a quick question. That was so much great information, Mr. Eagan. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if I was trying to write, but I can't write faster than you talk, but I'm not sure you talk faster than me, but no, I'm just kidding. I would like a list of your presentation today. Is that available, or? Yeah, a copy of your presentation, is that available, Catherine, or?
Yeah, it's on the website, Marianne, and it's also in Drive. So yeah, I can send you the link.
Thank you. Thanks again, Mr. Eagan. That was terrific.
Oh, you're welcome. And then other things to make it clear and simple for the clients, there should be a brochure from Albuquerque Housing Authority about our public housing program and Section 8 program and project-based voucher program. A little, double-sided trifold brochure that you can just give to clients and say, would you like to apply for this program? Here's a little bit of information about it. And then they can read it like, oh yeah, let's do this. I'll bring you my tax return.
Okay.
And that way you can give them the simple introduction rather than this comprehensive summation of 15 years of my work. So, and that's also, this has been video recorded, so you can replay it for people and you can just play them the 1 minute about the program that they're applying for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions, like if people have questions about rural New Mexico, I can offer tips about rural stuff or urban stuff, and I can talk about more about our job opportunities as well.
Brian, is this the trifold that you were talking about? Okay,
Yes,
I've got
Sherry?
it, and I can fax it to anybody who then wants to fold the piece of paper. So,
Thank you for the teamwork effort. I appreciate it, Sherry. That's great. That's exactly the brochure we give out in our lobby. And that's the perfect introduction to the public. And so the big simple takeaways too, if you only have a minute with the client, is just visit abqha.org. Apply for admission. And if you're doing that in June, the voucher lottery is open. They have until June 30th to apply for our Section 8 voucher lottery. It's now or never. So if they're even thinking they might be interested, they just want to have the possibility, they want to keep their options open, they should join the lottery, because we'll be pulling numbers in the lottery starting in July through next June. So maybe they want to move to Albuquerque next spring when their kids graduate from high school in rural New Mexico. Enter the lottery now. If you get a voucher from Albuquerque Housing Authority and you don't live in Albuquerque yet, you can move into Albuquerque and use it for a year and then go back to your small town. If you're already in Albuquerque and you've been here for a year, when we give you the voucher, you can take the voucher and leave and go to all 50 states. So the housing choice voucher is the most flexible and empowering money we have, which is why they're so popular. And
Okay,
so
which email was that? Which site was that? I remember what you said, but I don't remember the site.
sure, I'll type it in the chat.
Okay,
It's
that was for the June 30th deadline, right?
ABQHA.org. The Albuquerque Housing Authority is an organization.
Okay, thank you.
And so that's the simple, easy message for clients. You can put it in a text message, visit abqha.org, apply for Section 8 housing. And so that's the Housing Choice Voucher Lottery, HCV. That's the lottery. And if they want a sure bet where someone's going to for sure interview them and give them a shot to tell their story and explain why we should let them in, have them apply also for project-based voucher, PBV, which is a waiting list. Project-based voucher. However, it's not going to be a single-family detached house in the suburbs. They wanted that white picket fence with a yard for the dog on one level. Unfortunately, it's not what happens in project-based voucher. It's an apartment. But it could still be a nice, newly renovated kitchen, which is the most important room of the house. And if you're low income, and a brand new kitchen could probably sound really good. I should mention also the Housing Authority does allow pets. Some people think they can't have a dog in Section 8 of public housing. Yeah, you can have a dog or a cat, We're pet friendly. You can have one dog or one cat, not 5. But we allow small dogs and small cats. You have to pay a pet deposit for public housing. If it's a service animal, if it's a working medical device, it's a therapy animal for their anxiety, it's a service animal because they're blind, that's different. That means they have a disability. They're protected under the Federal Fair Housing Act. All landlords in America must allow seeing eye dogs for blind people. So if your client is just afraid to rent because they can't take their animal with them, but it's for disability reasons, the dog keeps them stable, keeps their mental health well, they just need to get a doctor's note saying that the dog is a medical device or cat is a medical device, and the landlord must allow the animal and they can't charge extra money. It's not a pet. There's no pet deposit. Similarly, if you have a client that's in a wheelchair and they want to rent a house with steps, the landlord, if it's private property, does not have to provide the wheelchair ramp. Again, federal law does not require the landlord to provide the wheelchair ramp. The tenant has the freedom to choose to rent the house with the front porch steps and to bring their own ramp at their own expense. And the Department of Senior Affairs at the City of Albuquerque will even help retrofit bathrooms and by adding grab bars by the toilet and the shower and the bathtub to help tenants get in and out. So at no expense to the tenant or the landlord. So if you have an elderly disabled client that's trying to age in place, but they're having difficulty with the bathrooms. The bathroom is the wet, slippery, most dangerous room of the house. That might be the solution, to call 311 and ask about senior retrofit programs, the Department of Senior Affairs. And other cities may also have this as well. So if you're outside of Albuquerque, this also applies for Bernalillo County. If your client lives in the South Valley, unincorporated Bernalillo County, Albuquerque, Bernalillo County have a deal. We share senior affairs, and I think they can do that too. But if you're in Santa Fe or other places, just call your local senior affairs department, see if they can put in a grab bar. Otherwise, the tenant has to pay for the grab bar. If it's private property, the landlord must reasonably accommodate the tenant, but they don't have to spend any money to do it. Other questions out there online? I'm happy to offer tips about who's got short lines. Well, I'll mention one of the little programs if there are no other questions. So Albuquerque Housing Authority has an interesting little partnership with Children, Youth, and Families Department called Keeping Families Together, KYFT. So I'd like to thank the folks at CYFT who are helping us with our Keeping Families Together program, where it's a special admissions preference for families that qualify, where if the only thing keeping them from getting their kids back is a place to live, if Children, Youth, and Families Department puts them in the Keeping Families Together program for Albuquerque and Guerrero County residents, we might be able to offer them a public housing unit, or maybe one of these renovated units at the Commons of Martineztown, the RAD units, and then they could move in and the court might award them their kids because now they have a decent, safe, and sanitary place to live. The standard for public housing and Section 8 housing is the unit must be decent, meaning the quality of being proper, the lights work, nothing leaks, safe, no electrical hazards, no carbon monoxide hazards, sanitary, the trash gets picked up, the sewage gets flushed. So it's decent, safe, and sanitary. And we inspect all of our apartments before tenants move in to make sure they're decent, safe, and sanitary. And then we do renewal inspections every year to make sure they're decent, safe, and sanitary. And if they're on a Section 8 voucher in private property and the unit all of a sudden loses power or loses heat, loses water, and it's not the tenant's fault, it's the landlord's fault, they should tell us. We'll go do a special inspection and then tell the landlord, we're suppressing the rent payment if you don't get the electricity back on. You've got to buy a new furnace. The heat's got to be back on. That was part of the contract. So we have some leverage with private landlords if they're on Section 8 vouchers, and there's a massive problem that threatens the habitability of the unit. Any other questions out there? Oh, and this also goes both ways. The tenant's got to clean the room every year. It's got to pass inspection for housekeeping, otherwise they can't get their money.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. There's a lot of really great information that I think that we're all, it's a lot. But
Oh yeah, I understand. Everyone's mind is.
Thank you. Very good.
And then finally, one last point for funding sources. So if there's going to be an affordable housing bond on the city of Albuquerque ballot this November. So keep that in mind if you're interested in where the money comes from to build these apartments. The local matching money for lots of tax credits and other HUD funding sources is the Workforce Housing Trust Fund bond. If it's passed, it would renew the existing property taxes. It would not cause any increase. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. Please remember to fill out the post-session survey, which is in the chat. Our next ECHO will be a didactic session on July 13th. And the topic will be making the most of the first 60 days. Presenters will be Leslie Jones, lead NMFAP attorney, and Jill Cohen, who is the director of programs for the Colorado Office of Respondent Parents Council. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you have an amazing week.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Great information.